Okay, it's a SoundOff show. It's Matt Cundill. This time I'm joined by Tracy Koga from ilikehue.com. Tracy joins us from Winnipeg. Hi, Tracy.
Hello. Good morning.
Great. In full disclosure, we work together on your podcast, and we get a chance to get together, not as often, I think, as we like. Over the last year, it's been difficult. And I've been meaning to bring you on just to talk about some of the things that you do and that you've been doing for many, many years. But take me back when I first got to Winnipeg, which was like 2006-ish. You were somebody who would frequent my TV screen, and you were working, I believe, on my television. So tell us what you were doing back then.
Well, yes, I was working for Shaw TV, and we were the community-based station. So very much in the community, telling all the good news stories. So nothing ever controversial, political, or derogatory, or any sense like that. So that was the beauty of the job, and certainly meeting so many different people from all walks of life. So it was a lot of fun.
When did you first know you wanted to get into television?
I didn't. It was a little prompting from my mom, who's actually volunteering when it was then Videon. And she said, you know, it's kind of interesting. She was just doing behind the scenes production for a little school show, educational show. So she said, there's another show and they're looking for a reporter. So I had just recently retired from the Royal Winnipeg Ballet. And I thought, well, I'll give this a try, you know. And lo and behold, the producers were awesome. And I spent probably the next, good portion, 10 years, like behind the scenes, being mentored by so many super experienced people that gave me a better view, I think, moving forward in my career, to really have a better grasp on all aspects of the production, not only in front of the camera, but also behind the camera.
And who were some of those mentors? Because I don't think anybody becomes successful at broadcasting without having a few of them along the way to hold our hands and to maybe push us back into line or to get us thinking. Who were some of those mentors along the way?
Oh, gosh. Well, you know what? The people obviously at Videon, because they were the beginnings of my career and taught me all the values, obviously, about volunteering and having a lot of patience. But Marv Thiessen, the great Marv Thiessen, who passed away a few years, probably many years ago, was a dear soul and very nurturing and very supportive. And all of my teammates, as I kind of call them, and got to know them, my cameramen, producers, comes to mind Jim McGregor, of course, cameramen, so many, John Camshin, and Michael Grant. And I would be really bad because there's so many to list now, Matt, because I spent a lot of years.
And I think it's once you get past like 5, you're then in the weeds, and it's you're leaving people out.
Well, and and I have to give kudos to my Shaw TV. So Videon then took over and bought out Shaw. So some of my teammates I got to come full circle with, and like just most recently, all of the team that when we all kind of left in 2018, there's so many, but Jeff Bromley, John McClure, Michael Byfield, Michael Grant, there's just so many that come to mind, and all of the producers too as well. So yeah, we were all family.
Tell me about Winnipeg and how you would describe it to, in compared to, other North American cities.
Well, you know what, Matt, I have to be really honest. This is the only place I've ever lived in. So born and raised, and here I am. Although I've traveled a lot. So having said that, I mean, the big cities like Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, like they're totally amazing. And when I'm there, I'm kind of thinking, wow, would it be ever cool to work here because there's so much happening. But to be truthfully honest, Winnipeg is very unique in itself, that we are small, but we play on the big world stage, so to speak. We have entertainers that are world renowned. We have politicians and celebrities that have done amazing things. So, you don't have to stray very far from your own backyard to get the good stories.
What were your favorite stories when you were working at Shaw? What was the one type of story that you're like, I love doing this. This makes it all worthwhile every day?
Well, the big part of it, Matt, at Shaw, we had a very, very long leash, so to speak. The beauty of it is pretty much we could do whatever story we wanted. So that was number one. There's no question. And of course, number two, you had to have a good eye for a story. So there's so many that come to mind. But I guess some of the opportunities that I was very fortunate to have while working with Shaw TV was one, going to Israel and doing a whole documentary on Winnipeggers that have been living in Israel and learning about their culture and the whole reason of they're staying in Israel, and Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. And then as well going up to Churchill and documenting the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra for the first time, going up north and bringing symphonic music to that northern community. And it was an interesting time because they were in relations with Russia. People might remember doing the great seaport between Churchill and Russia. So we had the dignitaries from Russia there, and it was just amazing. And the town of Churchill was just incredible. So those are just a few of the things. And then I guess lastly, sitting down at a table with President Jimmy Carter. He was here for Habitat for Humanity, their anniversary, and wow, he's quite the man. And so is his wife.
Yeah, and recently, by the way, CNN had a great documentary. I didn't know about his affinity for the Allman Brothers and his relationship with rock and roll music. So it's incredible all the things we learned. Because I mean, if you look back historically, he had 4 tumultuous years, which featured gas lineups and the Iran hostage affair, and it was all bad news every day. But here he is afterwards as just this man who's Habitat for Humanity. He came up here, and I believe he had to spend a couple days in the hospital just to because he overworked himself in the Winnipeg weather.
Yes, like at the time he was 92 and he was out front sawing and hammering, and it was when we were going through that incredible heat wave. And yes, he did succumb to some heat exposure, but first thing he says is, I was so impressed with all of your hospital care and Medicare, and so it was pretty cool.
I want to talk about 2 of the transformations that you made, and one of them was moving out of conventional television and working into the internet space. And this is, I mean, look at what we're doing now. I mean, this is pretty fantastic to think. I mean, obviously, looking at you and looking at me, one of us has obviously an eye for putting together a set and a backdrop, and as well, probably some makeup and better with appearance, because you are quite there. And I'm thank you, by the way, for that side shot of the set you've got. It looks fantastic. And all the work that you put into I Like Hue. So tell me how ilikehue.com came together and what it's all about.
Well, to put it in a nutshell, it was a continuation of what I had been doing before Shaw TV kind of changed their mandate. And I just felt that there was still a deep niche and a deep kind of hole left where we were pretty much the people that were filling that hole with the great community stories. So I really wanted to do something like that, but also knew that we were going to be online, Matt, too. So I know we had this conversation that, we can't be totally specific to Winnipeg. And then with this pandemic, I hate to say it because it's been overused and whatever, but we're all in this together. It kind of changed the whole dimension of what we were doing. And so now we have developed a new show called Hue At Home, which is definitely virtual now, but hence the set. Hopefully, fingers crossed, maybe in next month, we might be able to have a live guest here and do a combination of virtual like what we're doing now, and then with a live guest, and still continuing the conversations. And that obviously led me to you with all of your podcast and radio experience, the beauty, I guess, of just listening, because that's really something that we've all lost, I think, is just simply listening.
Yeah, and I was so glad that you reached out to me to become involved with podcasts. So for those who know me and what I do, and Tracy does the opposite of what I do. She's first and foremost, obviously, very visual. You've been doing stuff on Zoom. You've got a YouTube channel, and as well, you wanted to incorporate some podcasts so that people could listen while they were on the go. I've been the reverse. I've been working solely in audio, and just recently in the pandemic, have I taken the video thing a little more seriously by having the conversations here, and then I'll take the conversation and then I will put it on the podcast. So I know a lot of people want to do both and go gangbusters, but we're in a live scenario. And by the way, if anybody has a question or wants to comment, they can do so right now on Facebook. We'll be happy to address it. But yeah, the experience is, there are two different ways to consume really the same thing. And you've obviously done a great job with your set and becoming visual. Tell me a little bit about some of the guests that you bring on your show. I think you're going to be going live today at 11:30. So what do you got coming up today, and what are some you can expect?
Well, you know what? When I first approached you, right, we were an all-female kind of talk show, and we still predominantly are, but we really want to tackle the issues from a different point of view, I guess. And today we're going to be talking about virtual harassment. So it is actually involving very much something like we are doing right now. Sadly enough, a local teacher was harassed in her own virtual classroom. Believe it or not, some uninvited students got the link, and they entered the classroom and started yelling and shouting terrible things at the teacher. And she broke down in tears and she left her classroom. I have never heard of anything like this. And, I need to ask, a little bit more, have a little bit more tech savvy on all of this, because we're all in Zooms, we're all in webinars or whatever. And we think that we're safe, but apparently we're not. So this is a whole new wave of, I don't know what you want to call it, but virtual harassment. So we're going to all tackle that. We don't know much about it, but obviously we've had talks throughout the pandemic, and listening to all of our podcasts, which is kind of nice too, is how we've all kind of grown through all of this, and the information and the stories we've shared. We've had breakdown cries with people that have talked about their own personal abuse and the emotions, and of course, mental health is a huge issue. So we've had more women share their stories on how they're not coping. And, they, at the end, they say just by sharing their story, they feel better. And it's all these little things that you find a silver lining, not only in the pandemic that we're living in, but also for speaking, for listening, and having a platform, I think, for people to share their stories, which is really important to me.
You touched a little bit on the pandemic, and when it hit, here you are with the company, and it's a little bit beyond obviously a startup at this point because you've been going for so long. But oh no, you want to shift it home. And by the way, for those who don't know, I mean, Tracy was doing these shows out in the community in various places. At one point, you were looking at doing one in a mall, making it more public, making it more accessible. And then along comes this pandemic and kind of throws water all over those plans. How have you coped?
Well, obviously, moving it home. I don't know, Matt, like how things will be different. I don't think that there will be the big crowds to see a show or anything like that, so to speak. But who knows? I could be wrong. So it's like always pivoting. And I think having access to great technology and having, great mentors and people to kind of share their knowledge, that is how it's kind of guided me to where I am right now. And I don't necessarily want to stay like this, of course, but it's interesting. I think right now we'll ride the course. We're all kind of at the beg and mercy of our premier and the province and how well we do in this pandemic. But I really do definitely think there's going to be a shift in the industry that we're in.
Good. Well, I'm very excited today coming up. I also want to let you go because in 45 minutes, you've got your show to do. So I want to thank you for taking time before your show to jump on this one and to give everybody an update on what you're doing and how you're handling it. And ilikehue.com for everything involving Tracy. Thank you very much for being here today.
Oh, thank you, Matt.